This week on the Sports Initiative podcast, I sit down with former professional footballer and current University of Bath head coach, Jay Wilson. The former Norwich City, Bristol Rovers and Southend defender discusses his experiences in football as well as his coaching philosophies. I hope you enjoy. Cool. Jay, how are things?
Yeah, good, thank you. A bit of a relief after yesterday's result down in Swansea, but things are good. Good. So looking positive for the cup run here at uni.
Yeah, and so for you guys, do you know who your opponents and stuff will be?
I had a look yesterday. I'm pretty sure it's Durham, so we've got to go to Durham away, which hasn't been a great stomping ground since I've been here. We've been to Durham three times, and we've never beaten them.
Okay.
But I certainly think we're in a much better place now to go up there and get a result. So we'll prepare. It's not for another 2 weeks, so we'll prepare right, do all we can, and see what happens up there.
And how have you found, obviously, the just after Christmas, if you like, and everyone's kind of, I'd imagine, coming back in a little bit of drips and drabs, Christmas break, and obviously when people have got exams and stuff, how have you found that?
It's been a bit of a struggle at times, like you say, with the inter-semester break, and exams has got in the way. But it's the same every year, so you do get used to it. Again, the lads, the hardcore group have been great. Trained really well. Fitness was reasonable coming back after Christmas, which is always a plus point because you don't have to run any real physical stuff on the training pitch. So that was a good plus point. But you know, we have to make exceptions. There's individuals who have got 4 or 5 exams over a 2-week period, and in between that period of exams, they've got revision. So we understand that's the nature of the institution, and they need to do what they need to do. So it's not ideal preparation for the final league game, but you know, we deal with it.
And how have you found? Obviously, you've been in the role 2.5 years now.
Oh no, it's 5 years. It's
5 years.
5 year anniversary.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So time goes quick.
Time flies, doesn't it?
So how when you very first came in, did you find all that kind of those new challenges in terms of?
Being honest, a lot of it was a huge learning curve for me when I first came in. Just the nature of the institution, the way things are done, the process behind the scenes, and even now, I'll be honest, I'm still learning because it's such a big role. I'm still learning bits and pieces of how the process is, etc., etc. So it's been a challenge. Luckily, there's individuals within the building and that I work with on a regular basis that have helped me and guide and are very informative. And very open. And I'm quite self-aware in the fact that if I have issues and if I have something that I need to speak to someone about, I'll go and seek out answers. So, and I think that's going to be the nature of it for however long I'm in the role for. So, you know, I'm going to be learning all the time. This place is evolving, hopefully for the better, and we'll see where it takes us.
So, I guess the easiest question to ask is kind of how and why did you get into football in the first place? What was that?
Coaching
or playing? So playing
okay.
When you were younger.
I think it was just I think those things. I had a love for the game from a very young age. The game is obviously very, very different from what it is now. My dad was a huge football fan. It's probably a little bit of that. He was a good player. He always tells me he was a better player than I was. And he I think he had to cut long story short, he was with Chelsea when he was younger, had some really bad injuries and decided to stop playing football to kind of pursue a career, and he became an accountant. And I think from that day on he regretted it for the rest of his life. Yeah. And pretty much said to me, you know, if you've got an opportunity to play football, don't turn it down. So I loved it, fell in love with the game. I was reasonably good at it. Had a good family support system behind me, but that was the same with lots of other sports. You know, like we've just been talking. I was a massive fan of rugby, and being honest, my family always tell me I was a better rugby player than I was a footballer.
Yeah. But
rugby was a different sport then. Amateur game. Played basketball, played cricket, played badminton, judo. So football was always the first love, I guess, and it just progressed from there, really.
So what age did you start to specialise in football, if you like?
Oh, good question. And drop everything else?
Yeah.
I mean, I still played rugby up until I left school. I still played cricket until I left school. Basketball, so 16. I was offered an apprenticeship at Norwich when I was 16, and moved to Norwich to take part in that for 2 years, and everything else had to be put on the back burner, really.
Yeah.
So I was linked with Norwich since I was a kid, sort of 9-10 years of age. In them days, you weren't allowed to be signed for a professional club until you're 14. So I was an associate schoolboy, as it was then, signed at 14. Went through the 3 years of 14, 15, 16 as an associate schoolboy. So I knew from an early age I was reasonably good, and that was a possible pathway for me. So although I was playing all these other sports, football was the sort of standout one that I suppose at that age I thought this possibly could turn into a career if I progress and I stick to it and I'm good enough.
Yeah.
So it just went from there, really.
So in terms of like your growing up and stuff, you've played lots of different sports. If you were at home or something and had a night off, would you go out and play football with friends, or would it be you didn't really have a night off because you were doing so much other stuff?
Most of the time, if there was free time, it was football, and I mean it was out in the streets. Then a couple of jumpers in the middle of the road, basically. And if a car came along, it was car. Move all the jumpers off, get out of the way, and then car goes past, then you put them back and continue to play.
Yeah,
that's how it was when I was younger. Probably didn't play any other real sports socially, just with friends. It was all in organised formats. Played a lot of, like I said, rugby was my second love. But rugby wasn't a sport you could sort of play in the street, with your friends. So it was just the nature of the game.
Yeah.
Everybody identified with football. I had friends that pretty much all of my school friends were football fans, wanted to play football.
Yeah.
Not all of them wanted to play rugby, and not all of them wanted to play basketball. So it was just the way it was. And I remember supposedly going into school to revise for my GCSEs, and one of the friends would always take a football. I'd probably take a football, and instead of being in the library, it was kicking a football about on the grass. So that was just the way it was.
And in terms of games that you used to play when you were growing up, what obviously you've mentioned there's probably playing games like jumpers for goalposts and that type of stuff. Was there any other particular type of games that you play, or was it mainly that?
Football related.
Yeah.
I think I played my first real football match when I was about 10 years of age.
Okay.
And believe it or not, it was an 11-a-side game on a full-size pitch. Obviously, look at it now and you think, how ridiculous is that? But that was the way it was, and nobody knew any better. And luckily, things have changed. But I remember, well, I don't remember it very well, but I probably kicked the ball about 2 or 3 times in however long we played for.
Yeah.
So the organised football, I started off playing for my village side in Cambridge at 10 years of age. Luckily, we were quite successful. Forged some really good relationships with friends there. Coaches and management were good. And played for them really until I was, a good 4 or 5 years in a sort of local football leagues. And luckily, when I was playing for my village Girton back in Cambridge, I was selected to play for Cambridge and District Colts, the regional side. Then from there, I was selected to play for East Anglia Boys. This happened quite early, so this was probably about 10 or 11 years of age. I was selected for East Anglia Boys. That opened up opportunities to play abroad in football tournaments, etc. And then from there, Norwich knocked on the door and just said, come along and go from there. So
a lot of games with friends and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
And what about street games and stuff? Was it mainly games, or was it like examples of people playing Kirby and stuff like that? Did you ever play other things, or was it literally we just play matches most of the time?
Good question. I mean, the majority of the time it was probably just a casual kickabout.
Yeah.
We go down the park, a goal, one football, Wembley singles or whatever you want to call it nowadays, and a bit like that. I mean, we I'm sure we would play other games, but my memory sort of is fading a little bit with regards to that. But most of it was game related. Yeah.
So a discussion that I've kind of had before with Jake in one of these other recordings was he mentioned how similar to you, we would play a lot of Wembley singles, Wembley doubles, maybe headers and volleys, stuff like that, and then games. Whereas now, when you look at kids, a lot of them are doing ball mastery type practices and stuff. What are your thoughts on kind of that transition away from those type of games to?
My thoughts. Like ball mastery and that sort of thing was non-existent, obviously, when I was growing up. Which I think is great in many ways, because you have to become a master of the football to be a good footballer. But that necessarily, I think it can take away the competitive edge of playing football in the street in a little game. That competitiveness, and I can see it a little bit now. We're losing a little bit of an edge, that streetwise edge. Whether that's related to what the kids are doing now, I don't know. But if I think back to my first football match on an 11-a-side pitch and kicking the ball 2 or 3 times over the course of the game, it can only be good with the kids with a ball each, dribbling, toe taps, etc., drag backs. I can think it can only be a good thing. If it's blended together, it's the balance of the two, really. So
it's really interesting. I was speaking to a few people on some course I've been in, and they were talking about the culture around London in terms of like goal sites and stuff like that.
Okay.
So I wasn't overly aware of this, but they were mentioning that on a Friday night, even though they possibly shouldn't be doing this, you can go down to a local goal centre, and you'll have a lad from Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, West Ham, and they'll play like pickup games. So if it might be 5-a-side, if you're there late, you don't play, and probably like a couple of age groups above, a couple of age groups below, and they'll just play 5-a-sides and stuff. Which, when I first heard about it, I was like, physio departments must be having kittens, because they're coming back in on a Saturday going, what happened? Well, the kid we're playing tomorrow, he's actually smashed me into a board or something. But I actually think in terms of learning experience for kids, it's probably a real positive, because they get loads of the ball mastery stuff, which obviously at younger ages in particular is really important, but also they get the learning side of playing against different kids who are good and maybe older or younger, and working out how to adapt their game accordingly.
It's obviously a challenging environment, and they have to, like you said, they have to adapt their game and come up with the solutions to the challenges put in front of them. The competitive edge, like I mentioned earlier, I think in that environment they have to look after themselves. Football's quite a ruthless game when particularly when you get into men's football. It's okay being able to pass the ball 20 yards, 30 yards to feet, but there is a competitive edge, and there's an opponent going to try and stop you. I've been honest, part of my game as when I became a professional was tackling. It was one of my strong points, and I'm not saying I made a career out of it, but it was certainly a plus point, and stood me in good stead. And I think things like that are not getting eradicated, but certainly not what they used to be. And I know the game's evolving and it's changing from day to day. How much match of the day, and the pundits are saying, that's definitely a foul. And I'll be honest, I look at it and go, I hardly touched him. But that's the interpretation to what it is now. So, and I'm sure my dad, when he refers back to Norman Hunter and Billy Bremner, goes, they weren't any shrinking violets. So, I think, like you say, the kids playing that streetwise, just free play, but they have that challenge of an opponent trying to beat them, good talent, but they've got that background of that ball mastery behind them. If they can cope with the demands of that, then it stands them in good stead. Definitely.
Do you think there's a way to develop that mindset of not so much looking after yourself, but that competitiveness? So obviously you're working like older age groups now. Do you think there's a way of maybe getting a hold of a 14, 15-year-old going, actually, this is a really important part of the game that you struggle with? We need to develop that?
How you develop it, I'll be honest, I wouldn't know how to develop that. It's something that it's very difficult to coach. It's almost an intrinsic motivation to a will to win, a will to, people will always go on about Wayne Rooney, and he grew up playing on the streets of Liverpool, and that's where he gets his competitive edge. And if you took that away from him, he wouldn't be the same player. So I think social backgrounds have a massive influence on future development. And I mean, we live in Bath. They're very different from those streetwise London kids you're talking about, some of the streetwise Bristol kids you're talking about, Cardiff kids that have that little mean streak, that little bit of nastiness. that you need to become an elite footballer. So I think it's a huge part of it. How you develop it, I wish I could tell you the answers to that.
Yeah. So obviously you've mentioned that as a kid got into Norwich in terms of scholarship at 16. How was that scholarship experience for you when you went in there?
It was amazing. I mean, I was reasonably good at school. There was a fear there, obviously, of doing 2 years it was an apprenticeship as it was then. You know, I was still cleaning boots and cleaning toilets and sweeping changing rooms.
I still had that.
Yeah, so you know, making cups of tea for the professionals in the morning, and if they wanted something, you went and did it for them. Obviously, very apprehensive, and I mean, I did have thoughts of staying on at school and doing A levels, but realistically, I couldn't turn the opportunity down, and I didn't want to. So. It was a big learning curve, 2 years at Norwich. It's a massive change of lifestyle. I mean, I moved, like I say, when I was 16 and I was living in digs, and I remember crying my eyes out for the first 2 weeks as an apprentice. You know, it'd been the first time I've been away from school. From my parents for any long period of time. And but after a couple of weeks, it was fine. It was like, you know, you've been there for a long time. It takes a little bit of getting used to, and there is a certain amount of pressure when you're doing it, but it made me grow. I mean, I'm still probably quite reserved. Some people see I'm quite reserved, but I had to sort of come out of my shell a little bit when I was there and start to communicate and you know, get the best out of myself, because it was an opportunity. And luckily, after a little while, I thought, I'm doing okay. It might have been different if I was struggling and thought, I'm never going to make a pro footballer. But my 2 years as an apprentice, I did reasonably well, and I was quietly hopeful for a pro contract, and luckily it came about. So, but it was a massive learning curve, and you see football's a ruthless game. You can't see lads come in and out left, right, and centre, and luckily Norwich had a good background in developing players. I think they did it in what I perceived as the right way. And we had a good blend of people. We had lads from Norfolk, we had lads from London, we had lads from Cardiff. And Craig Bellamy was a prime example. He was an apprentice with us. So we had lads that you know, had come into the programme quite late. So just, you know, almost been recognised at 15, 16 and signed as an apprentice. But then there'd been lads that had been involved with Norwich since they were 10. So and we all had different ideas of what we wanted to do. We're all different people, and I had to quickly grow up and realise that these lads, you know, lots of them are very different from me. They've got very different social backgrounds than me, but so I had to learn to look after myself a little bit. And in that ruthless world of professional football, you know, you've got the first team sitting in the change rooms that you're looking after, and you want to be there. And it is character building. It is character building, and some of the things that happened then probably shouldn't have happened. Yeah. In a real world. Yeah. It certainly wouldn't happen nowadays. Yeah. Luckily nothing, you know, outrageous happened, but you know, there's things that I wouldn't want to revisit. But I loved it. It was great. It was a great experience and a great place and great people, great club. So yeah.
So earlier on you alluded to kind of having a support network, quite good with your family and stuff. Obviously, you mentioned you struggled during the first couple of weeks, just being away from home, all that type of stuff. Yeah. Was there ever points where you had a conversation with your dad when your dad was like, remember what the aim is, or was it supportive in that, or was he just kind of like, you're 16, get on with it type of deal? Because you do hear those stories where sometimes parents just go, "Here's what it is. You've got to."
Yeah, I'll be lying if I can recall specific conversations, but I remember I was quite fortunate in the fact that I could go home at weekends. You know, Norwich being only an hour and a half from Cambridge, I'd just jump on a train and go home and see the family, etc. Yeah. It wasn't difficult, but I think it was my dad was more, "Oh, you'll be all right. Yeah, you'll be all right." You know, he doesn't sugarcoat things, but he was. I think he knew that just give it time, and you'll be fine. And he was all right. You know, after a couple of weeks, I was fine. Being honest, I probably didn't raise it that much with them anyway. I don't think I told them that, you know, I'm crying my eyes out. that's just the relationship I had with my family. It was probably something that I've hidden. I hid at the time to a large extent. And it's probably what I do now as well. So,
is that from just them or others, or is there anyone that you would have spoken to around that time to?
No, I think that's just I don't think I would have spoken to anybody if I had any issues like that. I don't think there was anybody I could really go to and just say, I'm struggling with this. We talk about support networks now, and that wasn't available then, I don't think. With it out of your own family circle. But I probably just dealt with it myself in my own specific way. Didn't really raise it too much because I probably deep down knew that it was going to be okay. It just would take me time.
Yeah. Just try and dig in a little bit and get through that.
Exactly. And you do get there in the end. You just got to dig in and keep working hard and go from there. So
obviously you spoke about kind of the culture thing around Norwich, and that was quite positive. And obviously you mentioned that different cultures coming in. With someone like Craig Bellamy, for example, who you see at the top end, you see uber competitive and stuff like that. How was the merging of all those different cultures and personnels and stuff? In terms, I guess the question I'm asking is, was there any points where, as a team, you found that difficult, or was it because you all knew where you wanted to go as individual, as players, you kind of bought into what was being sold by managers and stuff like that?
I think we all knew where we wanted to go, and I think we all pretty much got along, most of us. There was obviously some lads that disliked others more than liked others. Yeah. So, but we have no real issues, even though we were from completely different social backgrounds, some of us, we all seemed to get along, and we had the same goal, that end product that we were striving for. Obviously, behind the scenes, when you're away from the training pitch and away from the training ground, there's little bits and pieces that go on between individuals, but that's young men. But 95% of the time, I'd say everyone was amicable, got on, and just got on as a group. We were in it together, and we were trying to help each other out and strive for the same thing. So I can't remember too many issues, to be honest.
Do you see that translate to like modern day young men in terms of their experiences? Obviously, you've worked in colleges and university and stuff now. Do you see a translation between the two, or do you see any differences between the two settings?
From my experiences, I've never really seen any difference. I think they're put in an environment where they're together, and they usually cope with it really quite well. Obviously, on a bigger scale, it might be different, but the groups that I've worked with, particularly here at the university, when I was coaching at Cambridge University, the majority of them just got on with it. They knew what they were here for. I'll be honest, I don't know exactly what goes on behind the scenes when they're away from me, away from the environment, so I can't comment on that. But I like to think they all get on with it, stick together, and have those same goals. So, but again, they've got very different backgrounds. I mean, I've got some lads who have been apprentices or scholars at professional clubs, so they've been brought up in a really professional environment and had that overlooking them for the last few years. And I've had lads that have come through college programs who have never been attached to a pro club, don't know that environment. Merging them can be difficult, but in the main they cope with it quite well.
I think it's good, just because you hear a lot nowadays how like social media and phones and technology kind of takes away from people's social skills. So it's positive the fact that you're saying that from your experiences there's not too much of a disparity between obviously your generation and the generation you're working with now.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, there's not a lot of difference. I mean, I think society is very different now, isn't it? Like you say, mobile phones when I was playing was completely non-existent. And Instagram and Facebook, they were non-existent. And now I went to watch England under-21s. Was it last year when they played Poland at Ashton Gate? And you got the team list, and literally next to all these England under-21s is their Instagram page, their Facebook page, their this page, their LinkedIn page. Thinking, really? You're here to play football?
Footballers,
so you have to accept the game's changed. social media I'm not a massive fan of, but it's part and parcel of society now, and we have to deal with it. But like I say, in the main, they're pretty good and get on with it and integrate quite well.
So, at what point did you start getting drip fed into the first team at Norwich?
I was lucky enough to play played in a testimonial when I was 17. I think it was against Manchester United actually, and it was Brian Gunn's testimonial, and that was my first sort of game with the first team as such. And Eric Cantona played and Paul Scholes played, so I'll drop it. Name dropping. I'd sort of been involved. This was when Mike Walker was the manager, and I'd been training with the first team for a while. Then after that, obviously I was still an apprentice then. Then I signed as a professional at 18, and then from then I was regularly involved with training squad matches, first team, pre-season tours abroad, going with the first team. There was no under 23s in them days, so it was a first team squad. All professionals pretty much were in it together. And then I made my debut. Blimey, was I 18 or was I 19? Some time ago. I think I was 18, December, I was 18. I was just about to turn 19 in January. I made my debut at Swindon. Bruce Rioch was the then manager. He came in as a manager and gave me my debut. And luckily, he saw something in me and liked me and put faith in me. And I made quite a few appearances under him. And then, being honest, Bruce Rioch left, and I was gutted, because I knew he liked me and he saw something in me, and I think he identified with the way I played. He was quite a strong, robust footballer, from what I know. I haven't actually ever seen him play, but he was a really good man. And being honest, when he left, I worried, and then I got word that Brian Hamilton was going to take over, who was his number 2, and I never had a great feeling with Brian. I never thought he really trusted me. When he left, I thought, my writing's on the wall here. I honestly believe that if Bruce was still there, I would have played a lot more, but Brian came in, that's football, and at the end of the year he released me, so that was the end of my days at Norwich.
So in terms of, for a younger player, you mentioned obviously the trust that the manager had in you. Yeah. Would you say that's quite an important thing?
I think so. I mean, I have it now with my players. Obviously at a lower level football, but I have to trust my players. I have to know that, they're going to do things right and not just go through the motions. And you put them on a football pitch, and they're going to give you their all. And I think it comes over a period of time. I worked with Bruce Rioch for quite a while before he put faith in me and trusted me and put me in the first team. And it's a big ask for a manager. I totally understand that. Results are so important at that level. And if you throw someone in and it backfires, it's his job on the line. So they have to really have faith in you and trust what you're going to do. But they have to trust their own ability and their own judgment as well. So, and I have to trust my judgment when I'm coaching and managing that.
So how an important part of this would be the other team, the first teamers and that type of stuff. How did you find the integration and then gaining the respect and trust of those guys?
Again, I think that just happens over a period of time. They get to know you in training, they get to see you playing in reserve games, and some of the first team players may play in the reserves. And some of the senior players like Matt Jackson was a centre half and captain at the time, Ewan Roberts. I can't thank them enough, because they're really be positive and help you out and encourage. And there were times when things were going badly, but there'd always be someone to speak to if you needed to. They'd always give you a pat on the back. And I think that's all important, because if things start to go badly in football, they can quickly go downhill rapidly. And I've seen it with individuals, and I think it's vital that rot stops quite quickly. So it might be a comment from a manager that stops it and gets you going back in the right direction again. So every single one, I can't think of anyone who wasn't great with me. I had better relationships with some of the senior players than I did with others.
So do you think that having that those senior players in quite from what it sounds like, quite supportive of them obviously identifying a younger player coming in, and you were doing, I assume, the right things to signal that you were going to work hard and add a minimum. Do you think them being supportive created the environment for everyone else to kind of follow that. Because what I see from the outside looking in sometimes is if you have the people at the top, senior ones that at times can be a bit derogatory or maybe not show themselves in the best light, the people below that kind of go, well, if they're able to do it, then I'm able to do it just as much or worse, and it kind of filters down, if you like.
Well, there's also the other side of it where, you know, these senior players that are actually playing in the first team might look at you and go, actually, you're a threat to my position, or whatever it may be. And I'm sure that happens where they'll try to put you down or destroy your confidence because they don't want you taking this spot. It's a ruthless world.
Yeah.
And it is a team game without a shadow of a doubt, but you know, you still have to look after the individual, and you have to look at it a selfish way in a fair bit, because once you leave a football club, you're quickly forgotten about because they'll replace you with the next person.
Yeah.
So it's ruthless. So you do, I hate to say it, but you do have to look after the individual, and if you do things right, and you can look yourself in the mirror and say, yeah, I've given my all, and you can't complain, but you need to survive as an individual first before you integrate into that team. And don't get me wrong, I got stick from the senior players, but not in a derogatory way as in to affect my footballing ability. It was more of a social thing that sometimes you get stick for whatever it might be, your haircut or the clothes you're wearing or whatever it may be. And it was never personal.
Yeah,
not from my experience.
I think industries like that anyway. Naturally, you're going to get stick and stuff. I remember, obviously, I didn't play any first team games for that, but being reserves, training around the first team, and being 18s and stuff, you're going to get stick because it's just the nature of the beast to a certain degree. And the other side of it, which I think it does, academies can obviously find it hard to prepare people for, is if you're playing in front of 20,000 people, 30,000 people, 60,000 people, you're going to get stick. You're going to get stick. If you're the ones I always feel sorry for, the subs warming up along the touchline, because you know they're going to get some pelters from crowds and stuff. So it is going to make you thicker skinned.
Yeah, and I mean, particularly in this day and age of social media, I think, you know, it's instant, isn't it? I mean, I've had stick. Obviously, you expect stick from opposition supporters. It's part of the game. You know, I was a fullback, so you know sometimes I'd go and take a throw, and some of the abuse you get was pretty horrendous, to be honest. But you know it's not aimed at you personally. It's you because you're of a collective as a team that are trying to beat the team they're supporting. So, I mean, it happens. But I mean, I've read things in the past which I wish I hadn't have read about, you know, from your own fans in fans forums, or someone's commented, and you know, I've read things about myself from my own fans, or a couple of fans, you know, wherever it may be, and you're thinking, it doesn't do you any good. Put it that way. Yeah, it doesn't do you any good. And I was quite when I was reading this thing from bits and pieces from I can't remember if I was really young, but probably when I signed for Southend, I read a bit, and I was how old was I when I signed for Southend? 24. And I like to think I was a relatively mature adult at that point who had some skills to deal with that, but still not nice. Still not nice when someone's making a comment about you on a social forum for people to see, but you deal with it and you get on with it. I don't even know who they are.
Yeah. I guess that's
not nice.
Particularly, it's been highlighted more and more with players on social media, and obviously fans giving them stick, but then also going the other end with death threats and all that type of stuff, which is ridiculous. But was there a way you developed thick skin for that?
No, not really. It wasn't. I don't think it was anything. I was never taught anything, or you know, I didn't attend a course to say, yeah, this is how you deal with it. You're never given any skills like that. I just think it's something that's inherent that I had to do, and whether that's from my family or whatever. I just did, and you just get on with it. And yeah, it does upset you for a short period of time. You just forget it. It's always there though. It's always there. And you know, I've been honest, I can't remember specifics about that stuff that was written. And it wasn't a lot. It wasn't, you know, pages and pages. It was, you know, the odd comment. how you played at the weekend or whatever, or in general terms of what you like. And you know, if I think about it now, it's still not nice, but I can't do anything
Get
about
on with it.
And I'm 41 now, and I still don't like it.
Yeah.
But you just deal with it, don't you? And these things happen.
I guess that's one of the things, as players get older, they do learn the ability that, like, as a 19, you might have been sitting there going, what have I ever done to this guy? Like, maybe I do need to overlap more or something like that. Whereas as you get a bit older, you go, it's a random guy down the pub. He's not gonna know me. He doesn't know what's going on in our team meetings where the gaffer's told me not to overlap at any point because you've got.
Well, that's the thing. There's a lot more detail behind it, and they don't know you as an individual. And I remember someone once saying to me, he said, you know, when you step on a football pitch, all they see is a footballer. They don't see you as a human being. They see you as a footballer product. And they said they don't know if you've got family issues. They don't know if your wife's ill or your girlfriend's just left you or you've had your house burgled or whatever the night before. You step on a football pitch and all that's irrelevant, which is true. But you're in that industry where you are under the spotlight for 90 minutes every week, and they pay their money to watch you play football, and it's the nature of the beast. You get on with it.
So obviously you mentioned a minute ago about moving to Southend and stuff. How did you find that transition? You said that you kind of left Norwich and trying to look for a new club. How was that process?
Being honest, when I left Norwich, I actually came to Bristol Rovers first. So I was at Bristol Rovers for 2 years. So I left Norwich at the end of the year, and it was tough. I mean, I played, I think, 25 games in the first team at Norwich at this point, and I was still young. Was I 21? Yes, I think I was 21. And so I hadn't played bags of first team football, but I had first team experience and done reasonably well, and in the Championship, as it still is. And I suppose you presume, well, something will come up.
Yeah.
But it didn't until, to cut long story short, I'd actually agreed to go to Luton, purely and simply. It was a link through an old goalkeeper coach who was at Norwich called Malcolm Webster. And he was linked with Luton, and he said, I can't even remember who the manager at Luton at the time was. It's really bad. But anyway, they said, you know, come in for pre-season, we'll have a look and go from there. So this was what I built up for all through the summer. I think it was about 2 days before pre-season was going to start, and I got a phone call from the chief scout for Bristol Rovers, a guy called Richard Everson. He said, Ian Holloway wants you to come down here to Bristol Rovers. I said, well, I'm going to do it. He said, no, we want you at Rovers. So instead of going to Luton 2 days later, I was driving down to Bristol and signing for Rovers. So big change, massive culture shock. Great set of lads at Rovers. They just missed out on the playoffs the year before. They had a really good year, been in the top 6 all year, and missed out on the last day, I think. Had some big names. Jason Roberts was still there. Jamie Curtin was still there. Bobby Zamora was still there. So the front four, those three plus Nathan Ellington.
Okay, yeah.
It was like, okay, this.
How did you fit all of those in?
I know, it's mental, crazy. And so I saw it and I thought, oh yeah, these boys are going to do big things here. They're going to do really well. And Ollie, I obviously met Ollie on the first day, and he was great. You know, he's the most enthusiastic man about football that I've ever met. And but within, I think before the season had even started, so within 4 to 6 weeks, Bobby Zamora had left, Jason Roberts had left, Jamie Curtin had left. So Nathan really was the only recognised striker at that time. They'd signed another lad called Martin Cameron from Scotland, but only just signed, so didn't really know a lot about him. But there was a lot on Nathan's shoulders, and Nathan was 19. So it went from, you know, having that strike force to relying on a 19-year-old. And Nathan was amazing, what a player, and his future career showed that. But there's a lot on his shoulders. So that year we actually ended up getting relegated. But also a bit of a culture shock with regards to, these are the things you take for granted when you're a reasonably big club like Norwich, is the fact that I used to just go in with wash bag and everything's there for you. Whereas at Bristol Rovers, you know, you take your training kit home and wash it and this sort of thing. So they're just the little bits that, I'm a little bit embarrassed about it now, but you mollycoddled a little bit too much, and I had to get used to doing that, which sounds ridiculous. but I wasn't used to it, and I did. It didn't take me long, obviously, but I've got to take my own training kit home now. But that's
cooking for yourself and all that type of stuff
exactly.
as well.
So, yeah, just a different environment. Norwich had their own training ground. Bristol Rovers, we were training at the beaches, as it was down in Brislington. Completely different environment. So yeah, you just had to get used to the bits and pieces, and the Mem's a little bit different from Carrow Road, and obviously a big city. Being in Bristol, I mean, I actually lived in Bath when I was playing at Rovers, but the environment, Bath and Bristol, I had to get used to it. And I was a long way from family. I was a single man at the time. But you soon get used to it, and like I said, luckily the Rovers lads were all good lads. So I like to think I integrated quite well.
So you mentioned the front four there, and who all of them. Obviously, I'm a little bit younger than you, but I remember all of them. Bobby Moore in particular, I'm a Spurs fan, so for me, I have fond memories of him. But all of them, from my perspective, went on to have really, really good careers and did really well. Is there a common thread between those guys that you look at, or any of the other players that you've mentioned that you look at and go, actually, those top players all have this quality?
To be honest, I didn't see Bobby that much when I was younger, because he wasn't there for very long. You knew he had a lot of ability, but he was still quite a young guy. I can't remember how old Bobby was then. I think he was only about 19. No, they're all very different if I think about it. I mean, you look at Jamie Curtin, and I knew Jamie from Norwich because he was at Norwich and then signed for Rovers before me, so I knew Jamie from Norwich, and he just knew where the net was. And I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying he'd been non-existent for a lot of the game, and then suddenly, bang, he scored 2 or 3, and you're just like, wow. Whereas Jason was just all hustle bustle, powerhouse, strong, quick, would work his socks off for 90 minutes. So very, very different. Bobby, well, we all know what Bobby was about. He'd work his socks off and knew where the net was, so he's a bit of a blend of the two. Yeah. I'm not saying that Jason didn't know where the net was, but being honest, they weren't. I didn't get to see them for that long a period of time. Like I say, from me signing to them leaving was 4 to 6 weeks. I didn't really get to see a lot of them. So I probably know exactly the same amount as you from watching them on TV.
Yeah,
I'm picking up their big bucks. But Nathan, he came out of non-league football. Nathan, from London, very clued up young man. Great feet, strong, quick, and he had being honest, because of the non-league aspect, he almost had a little bit of a street mentality to it, in the fact that I'm just going to play football. I'm not going to get stressed about it, or he didn't appear to be stressed about it. It was like, it's just a game of football. I'm going to go and play, and almost not treat it like a street game of football, because it was more than that, but it was. He could relax a little bit more, and he hadn't had that pressure on him for years and years and years, and there was no expectations. That he almost just was a free spirit. Give him the ball, let him do it. And that's what he was about.
I think there's a lot to be said for those type of players. I played with a lad, and he was at MK Dons and a few other places. I remember us playing a game at Plymouth, and he missed a penalty.
Right. Okay.
And started laughing.
Okay. Right.
And so, obviously, some of the people in the team, I was not overly vocal in terms of hammering people. That's kind of not my bag. Right, okay. But some of them got very annoyed and angry from laughing. Okay. 5 minutes later, he's cut inside, beaten 3 and whipped 1 top bins. Oh, yeah. Okay. And it sat with me for quite a few years, kind of going, almost the arrogance of it, to laugh at missing the penalty, to then be able to do that. But then when I've looked at it subsequently and from coaching stuff, I almost think his ability to do that after is because of the freeness of spirit of going, I'm not actually that fussed, I've missed a penalty, it's a penalty. It
didn't affect him too much. He still got on with the rest of the game and did what he did.
It's almost like a type of amnesia. I know in American football they talk about quarterbacks having amnesia, forget that they've thrown an interception or whatever, and focus on the next thing, which I think almost his nonchalanceness towards it was that, and that he would miss a penalty, laugh, and then 5 minutes later do that, and you're kind of like...
not too much, not put too much on emphasis on the outcome of that penalty. It just looked at the next bit. And I mean, I'll be honest, probably if I was playing in that game, I'd probably look at him if he was laughing in my team. I'd probably be really upset with him.
Yeah.
And find it quite disrespectful.
Yeah.
Because,
it's not funny.
It's not funny.
Yeah.
It's not funny. But I know this is the thing. I mean, you look at these players that can do wonderful things with the football, and you're almost like that. You have to treat them differently. You have to treat Messi differently. You have to treat Ronaldo differently because they've got that ability, and people respond to different things, don't they? In different ways.
You would have seen it, the video of Maradona warming up.
That was the very thing that just popped into my head.
So, as a team member there, I'd be looking at it going, "This ain't right."
Yeah.
Like, he needs to be doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
But then, are you kind of culling Maradona to
exactly and
not be the player that he is?
I remember someone asking me exactly the same thing. If your player did this and showed me the video of Maradona with his laces untied when he was just in tricks and almost like it was playing
dancing around,
and if you went, no, you come here and do the warm up like the rest of us, but then that might have an adverse effect on what he actually does on the pitch. So marrying the two up is very, very difficult. I prepared for a game as a pro, very different from other people. I was probably a little bit too. I've been honest, when I played, I don't know how to put it into probably thought about it too much, and it had a negative effect because I did think about it too much. I didn't just play, but that was just the way I was. Obviously, Craig Bellamy was the prime example when we played as kids. He had this freedom, and he not say he wouldn't have missed the penalty and laughed, put it that way. So he wouldn't have done that. But he had this freedom, and it was just this belief in his own ability to do things on a football pitch. And he was a young man playing in the first team. It was like, I don't care who you are. This is how I do it, and I'm pretty good. And I trust myself, and I believe in myself, and I'm going to do it.
So you talk about the preparation before a game. What would that look like for you? And did that change throughout your career, or did it kind of remain consistent?
It pretty much remained consistent. I like to think that I was probably the model professional, really. But that's had a little bit of a negative effect in the fact that I probably thought about it too much all the time. Couldn't switch off from it, and it took over my life.
So like night before games, would you be going, might be playing against this guy or this guy, this is what I've got to do?
I couldn't sleep and stuff like that. And, I probably didn't deal with it in the best way. I never really signed any long-term contracts, so I was always under pressure to make a career out of it. Am I going to get a new contract? Am I still going to be here next year? Because I knew I was never someone who on a football pitch would stand out as such, in the fact that you watch Messi and these talented players that are going to create and be offensive players. They stand out, don't they? They catch your eye.
Yeah.
I was never one of them, but I always was one of those that you could put on a football pitch and would do a really good job.
7 out of 10 is.
Yeah, and you'd be able to put me right back, left back, centre back, centre midfield, and do a job.
Yeah.
I was a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, as such, probably. So I was always fighting for my career, really.
Yeah.
Fighting to make a career out of it. And being honest, when I left Bristol Rovers, I dropped out. I left Bristol Rovers after playing pretty much every game for 2 years and changing manager. Left, couldn't find a club. So I dropped into non-league for a very short period of time. Luckily, only a year. I've been honest, I missed most of that year because I broke my ribs quite badly. But
so you've dropped out, and then you're kind of jumping back in. How did you find that transition to kind of dropping out of football, then going back in? And what was Southend like in itself?
I mean, Southend was a very different club from Bristol Rovers and Norwich City. But I found it not easy, but the professionalism of it, the expectations, I all knew anyway, so it was almost just going back into another club. The environment was obviously different. I struggled to start with. I did going back into it. I hadn't played at that level for over a year. Fitness-wise, I'd been out for a long, long time with my broken ribs, so I struggled with it a little bit. But I'm being honest, after can't remember when it was now, but I didn't play a lot in my first year. Steve Wignall was the manager who signed me. Didn't play a lot in my first year. He left, and then Steve Tilson took over. I think it was the beginning of my second year, so I signed for a 1 year, and then I signed another 1 year after my first year there. Steve Tilson took over, and I remember I was on the bench, and we played West Ham in the Cup. I was on the bench at West Ham, and I remember getting off the coach when we got back to Roots Hall and saying to the gaffer, "Oh my God, I don't want to be here." I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't feel comfortable, anything like this. And then he said, "Okay, we'll discuss it a little bit further over the next couple of days. But if that's how you're feeling, I don't want you to go anywhere. But that's what you're feeling. Fair enough." And then I can't remember. We played on a Saturday. Well, the team played on a Saturday. Or was it a Monday? I played on a Saturday and lost somewhere. And then we trained on a Sunday at the training ground. And I said to the gaffer afterwards, I said, do you want me there, or do you want me to stay away, or what do you want me to do? And he said, "No, you're playing." This was a Monday game, and we won, and I stayed in the team for the rest of the year. And I stayed in the team for the following year. And we got 2 promotions on the trot. So from going, I want to leave, and I was really, really unhappy. And people, I just didn't enjoy it. I wasn't enjoying it. Even not playing football again at that point was an option. That I've had enough of this. I just want to go and be secure in what I do. And so from that to literally a week later, playing in a game at Roots Hall, we won the game 2-1. I think it was Macclesfield. And then we literally went on a run and ended up getting promoted through the playoffs that year. And then the following year, we won League One. So to get into the Championship. And I played every game for 2 years. Then when the Championship came, it became apparent I wasn't going to play in the first game of the Championship, and then it all started again. So I played 2 years, worked my socks off to get there, and then it was taken away from me again. So football was like that. It was peaks and troughs, and I'll be honest, I'm still bitter about it to this day. I was not really given a chance in the Championship when we got there. But that's something I have to live with to the day I die.
I think that's always the common thing with clubs that come up to Premiership in managers juggling. Do you stick with what you had, which is what like Sheffield United, for example, have done? Obviously, they had a bit of a maverick system from what I can see. Or do you go and do what Fulham did and chuck a load of money at it and hope that actually by bringing in inverted commas, better quality players gives you a better chance to cope?
Exactly. I mean, I don't know whether I would have. I'm quite confident I would have coped in it, but I just wasn't given the opportunity. That's what gets to me a little bit. But the back 4 that have played in that League One Championship winning season, 3 of the back 4 changed on that first day of the season. So only 1 player retained their position, and the team ended up getting relegated from the Championship that year. And I'm not saying that we would have survived, but there was some money thrown around. Michael Ricketts was a prime example. Michael Ricketts had played for England on a hat full of money. Came in and didn't want to work hard, so came in and I can't remember how long he lasted at Southend, but didn't last very long at all. But he hadn't been through that period of 2 years where we were struggling in League Two. He hadn't been through that process of 2 years where we'd worked hard, worked our socks off. We'd had to go to Boston United on a Tuesday night and really graft to get a result. And then in the Championship, Stoke first game of the season, and walks into the team.
I imagine as a group as well, those, like you said, Boston on Tuesday night brings you together. Because if you're doing a running session for that game and you get through that game and then you're getting promoted and stuff, as a group you kind of go, actually, that's my number 9 or that's my centre half. Or
well, that's the thing. I think those 2 years, one of the big plus points of those 2 years was just the togetherness. The team spirit we had was phenomenal. I remember going to Blackpool on New Year's Day and we were 1-0 down with about 10 minutes to go. And even at 1-0 down with 10 minutes to go, we all pretty much looked at each other and went, "We're going to win this." We just knew we would, and we ended up winning 2-1. helps when you've got someone like Freddie Eastwood who knows where the net is. But we just had a belief that, whatever the state of the game was, we'd do all right. And sure enough, I remember speaking to some fans at Northampton, and we played Northampton. So this was the year before. We played Northampton 3 times that previous year. So two times in the league, obviously, and then 2 times in the playoff semi-final. I was chatting to them afterwards, and they said, you're good side, but you're the most rugged, determined, spirited team we've played against. We just ground them down. Over 4 games, we just ground them down, and I think that's what we did with a lot of teams. And I think that was just what we had as a team, as a collective, and that was broken up the year we got promoted to the Championship. But people like Simon Francis, who obviously is now captain at Bournemouth, I know he's injured for a long period of time now. He came in, did great. He's obviously gone on to bigger, better things.
Yeah.
But not all of them worked out.
And your recruitment's not all. More often than not, your recruitment's not always going to be right. Even if you might get 3 out of 5 right, but how detrimental are those 2 that you haven't?
Yeah, I just think in football, I think you just have to earn the right to play. And individuals have to earn it. And again, this is a bit of a dilemma with Maradona. Does Maradona have to earn the right to play? But you know what it's all about. But that year, people were coming in and hadn't really earned the right to play in that first game of the season, which I don't agree with. But that's because I suffered personally from it. So, but Michael Ricketts, should he have played in the first game of the season? If you look at his CV, yes. If you look at what he's done during pre-season, no. So
is there a lot that you carry over from your experiences of playing into coaching now?
Yeah, there is. Probably most of it, which is not always a good thing. Not always a good thing, because I know I've made decisions based on how I would have responded to that as a player, and it's not always been the best process as a coach. Because your frames of reference from your upbringing, they affect your decision making now as a coach or a manager. And again, being honest, I've picked teams here at the university that I probably shouldn't have picked. But I need results, or from a personal ego point of view, I need results. And people have got away with things that shouldn't have got away with it. But it's tough, when you're thinking, you desperately need a result on a Wednesday. We've got to beat so and so on a Wednesday. I need my best 11, but one of those best 11, or 2 of those best 11, or 3 of those best 11 haven't pulled their weight in training, or just not turned up, or whatever it may be, or gone out on a drink when they shouldn't have done. I need them to play, so they get me a result. You trade-off. What do you do? So I've made decisions based on numerous factors, really, not always ones that I look back on and go, yes, I made the right decision there. But you have to make them there and then, and stick with them, and you have to live with the consequences of them. So,
and then, how did you find your transition from playing to coach? What kind of drove that? Obviously, you mentioned that you left Southend. And then, what kind of, did you play for a few more years after that?
No, being honest, I left Southend. But when I got injured, I ruptured. I longitudinally ruptured my Achilles tendon. Which is an injury I had while I was at the end of my last year at Southend, and I remember playing a reserve. Being honest, I felt it pre-season of my last year there, and I kept playing through it, and I was taking tablets just to get through games and that. And I got to a reserve game we played at Norwich, of all places, and I remember warming up and thinking, this is just not right. And then the next day, I got through the game, and then the next day I couldn't walk up the stairs. And I said, oh, no, I need to get this fixed. Whatever it is, I need to get it fixed. And at that point, I just thought it was something simple like tendonitis. Anyway, after a long period of being out, it ended up being quite a major surgery. I had to go to Sweden to have surgery on it. And when I recovered from that, I hadn't played in 18 months. Yes, 18 months. So I haven't played in 18 months. My contract at Southend was up. Luckily, when I was still playing, Gary Waddock, who was the manager at Aldershot, said he wanted me to go down there. And he stayed in touch with me. He was great. I can't give him enough credit. He was fantastic. And he said, when you're right, come train with us and we'll see how you are. Anyway, that pre-season I went to Aldershot. I wasn't fit. During that time, being honest, I started struggling with my other Achilles. And anyway, I didn't get a contract there. And then within a week later, I was told I'd partially ruptured my right Achilles. Anyway, after lots of serious thinking, I was advised that this could be an ongoing process with my Achilles, or both Achilles. I decided to call it a day and seek pastures new and see what else was out there for me. So my first port of call was, being honest, it took me 18 months to probably get over the fact that I wasn't going to play at that level again. Or really. And you lose your identity. Started socialising a bit more than I should do, drinking a little bit more than I should do. All in all, it's probably 18 months. It took me to get over the fact that identity that I'd forged from the age of 10 to I was 30 when I retired. So 20 years was taken away from me. So anyway, after that 18 months, I decided that I wanted to study. So I went back to university, studied, did an undergrad, and at that point I didn't know how good I was going to do at university because I'd left school at 16, didn't have any A levels. And while I was there, I was studying, so I studied at ARU in Cambridge, and while I was there, I coached the Cambridge University team. So that was the sort of first little step into coaching. While I was studying, I was doing my coaching badges. Well, then I ended up doing a master's degree. And coaching wasn't sort of my first port of call. It wasn't, my target. It wasn't, I desperately want to be a coach. And if I'm honest, it's probably not something that comes naturally to me. It doesn't come naturally to stand in front of a group of 25 lads and tell them what to do. It's not me as such, but it's part of my role, and I know that, and I'm developing day in, day out, week in, week out. And I know it's going to be an awfully long process, but luckily I've got my coaching badges through that process. I've done my undergraduate degree and my master's degree, and that's where I am now. So, but the transition was difficult, yeah. But again, it wasn't. When I finished playing, or when I was playing, I was desperately wanting to be a coach. It wasn't like that. It's just something that, being honest, I've fallen into a little bit.
Mm. It's interesting to talk about a transition, because that's actually what my dissertation was at uni.
Okay.
Talking about people almost losing their identity.
Yeah.
And I've had people that were interviewed during that have said they used to hate Saturdays.
Yeah.
It's a similar story to yours in terms of picked up an injury, couldn't play anymore. Yeah. And he said, Saturdays for me are the worst day of the week.
Yeah.
He said, because I was known as this person who is a footballer.
Yeah.
And he said, and I'm not that anymore. I can't be that because of what's happened to me.
Yeah.
He said, I hate Saturdays now.
You see, I had the conflict, I'll be honest. I had it as in, I can't do that anymore. That's not part of my life anymore, and that's a massive part gone. But I had the other side of me, which was like, thank goodness for that. It's been taken out of my hands, and I'm not going to be doing that on a Saturday anymore. I don't have that pressure of performing, trying to earn contracts, paying a mortgage, fans screaming at you. It wasn't. So I had that conflict of I wanted it, but I didn't want it. It's really strange to try and articulate what I mean, but stepping away from it took a massive weight lifted off my shoulders a little bit. So,
with those pressures, did you not realise you had them until you had finished, if you like? Were you constantly aware of them for your career?
Yeah, no, I was aware of them constantly. I was constantly for 12 years. And looking back on it, it was just me. It was just my makeup. I put that pressure on myself, and I do now. When I'm doing courses, or I'm doing an education course at the moment, and that pressure that I put on myself isn't healthy, but it's just the way I am. So when it was taken away from me, playing side and not playing on Saturday, I actually really enjoy my Saturdays now. I don't coach on a Saturday. I actually really enjoy it. I've got a young family, which is slightly different, but it was a little bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to try and go and earn a contract somewhere, you know. But then there's the other side of it where you walk into a room and, you know, I used to do it and people know you're a professional footballer. Now people go, oh, you're a professional footballer, were you? I didn't know you used to play professional football. So, not that they should, but, you know, so, you know, there's that ego attached to it as well. So
I guess the other side as well, if you're academic or you work in a bank or something, that reputation of you coming up through that society will always kind of be there, whereas with the football stuff, obviously when you move into coaching, which is a slightly different field, you can go down avenues where actually no one has any idea of your previous background or anything like that.
No, exactly.
Which again, at a point, I guess at some point's healthy. At another point, you kind of like, that's all. That is a learning experience that you've gone through for a 12-year professional career and your 2 years as scholar that actually kind of makes up what you do now and the person you are and the experience you have. Then and relationships change. Relationships change massively. You know, you're around. Everybody wants to talk to you about your football. Everybody wants to talk to you about football, but it's almost like what I've got nothing to speak to you about now. To be honest, my dad used to phone me pretty much every day when I was playing football. I was training, blah blah blah. It didn't happen when I finished. No, you know, I'm not angry or bitter about it. It's just a fact. You know, my dad loved it. My parents, my family, my sister as well, my older sister, followed me everywhere. They went to watch pretty much every game that I played in professionally all throughout my whole career. I mean, when I was playing at Bristol Rovers, the home game was a 6.5 hour, 7 hour round trip. And, you know, some of those games were on a Tuesday night. They'd have to leave work early and wouldn't get home until 2 o'clock in the morning, or whatever it may be. So because that changes for you, it does change an awful lot for everybody else. You know, my dad openly admitted, he said to me, "What am I going to do on a Saturday afternoon now?" You know, tongue in cheek, he said it, but you know, what am I going to do now? Sorry, Dad, you're going to have to go down the local rec and watch Great Shelford play. And still enjoy that much. But do you think that some of the pressure you put on yourself is relative to that, or not? Or do you think it's just you as a makeup, that's what you do? Or do you think that because you knew that they were making commitments to come and watch you all the time?
I don't think I was conscious of that, the commitments that I'm making. I think it was just something that I probably presumed. Not presumed. It was just something that I just accepted, didn't even think about. It was just
always
what
there.
I did.
So, yeah.
And they did that from, you know, when I was 10 years of age and started playing 11-a-side football on a massive pitch. You know, it was just something that happened, and I do look at it now and I think, that was a big ask, massive ask, and you know, not just time wise but financially as well. It must have been huge. Obviously, petrol wasn't quite as expensive as what it is now. It's all relative. So, but it wasn't something that I probably was aware of really until I reflected on it after my career had finished.
And then, obviously, you mentioned you're kind of falling into coaching and all that type of stuff. I know a lot of the work that is going on in courses and people, it's all around philosophies and philosophy of play and your style or brand or whatever you want to call it. What are your thoughts around having philosophies? Do you have any particular philosophies, the way that you want to play, and have you transferred those from experiences, or how have you got those?
It's funny, I think about it a lot, and we look at what we do at the university as a development tool, you know, and it isn't really about winning. Obviously, winning there's a correlation between winning and development. If you're going in the right direction, you're probably going to win football matches. But I like to think that we coach, and obviously the way that we want football to be played, and everybody loves this, you know, passing game now, playing through the thirds. You know, it's not the old Cambridge United style or Wimbledon style, smashing it forward. However, there has to be a place for it, and when the lads leave here, they're not always going to play for someone who has the same idea as me. They might play for a manager who goes, no, I don't want you to do that there, I want you to do this. So we have to make them almost malleable and adaptable to the environments that they end up in. Because football's very different at different levels, isn't it? And can you play out from the back, playing in the Southern League or the Western Premier League? Possibly not. So, you know, I do look at the way I coach. I don't have a specific philosophy, I'll be honest. I just do the way. I haven't written it down or anything like that. I just have a way of doing things and the way I think it should be done. But we have an acceptance that, like we say, we can play the prettiest football here ever, but when they go and play men's senior football externally, it's a completely different game. And I see it now in the fact that lads come here sometimes who have come from academies. They're taught to pass the ball as a centre back from 10 yards and play out from the back and all that. And they come here, but they can't defend. They can't do the other stuff that you need to do as a defender. They can't stick their body on the line when it hurts, or go and block a shot. Someone's going to smash a ball from 20 yards. They don't get out to it to block it and get hurt by it, or stick your head in when it hurts. They don't do that. So it's impossible to cover all the facets you need to be a professional footballer, and there's no footballer alive that's got every single one of them. But we try and make them adaptable to the environment that they're going to end up in.
So then, in terms of the development stuff, do you have like individual plans for lads, or is it more of a team-based stuff, and then around that you'll try and develop their game understanding and
it's more of a team element, really. Obviously, individual, we do chat to individuals on a regular basis, but it's more of a team collective, really, of what we're trying to achieve and the way we play. And we never, obviously in coaching sessions you have to work with specific players, but we always try to incorporate everybody else because it's still relevant to what they need to do. So you can't just focus on them and the others get neglected. So probably we could just do a blend of the both, look on the collective and the individual, because I say it's a team game, but you have to look after the individual first. And these individuals, when they leave here, they're going to be out on their own, and they're not going to have their teammates that they've been working with for 3 years to look after them. They go into a different environment who might do things slightly different from what we do. There might be a central midfielder who's not quite as nice as a central midfielder they've played with before. So you just have to give them the tools to be able to cope with all the demands that might be put on them. And they won't because they won't be able to develop everything, but give them a good platform to do that.
And do you still think players at this age can still develop stuff, be it skills? So for example, if you had a centre half who's right footed, do you think he'd still got the ability to go and practice his left foot and make that a better thing, or do you think that there's a ceiling to when you can develop those skills?
Good question. With technical ability, I mean, that example you've just made, I think it'd be very, very difficult to get someone who can't kick with their left foot to start kicking with their left foot. I think it's too late to have that. However, I think you can give them an understanding of, say you're a centre half, about marking slightly different. Well, actually the ball's there, so maybe you need to go on this side to anticipate that ball into feet or whatever. I think you can develop that. But technical ability, you can work on it. I don't think you're going to ever improve it massively.
Do you think they already have to have a base to be able to build upon?
I think so, yeah. I think so. Sadly. Sadly. So, yeah, that's my opinion on it.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting one, because I know I watch and listen to a lot of sports out in America, and they do a lot of their players will go and practice stuff. And I look at the top end, and I'm always curious to see whether it's because they already have a very good skill set, which allows them to kind of work on other stuff, or whether it's the hours they put into practicing that. Or
I think they have to have a very good skill set to start with, to be honest. If you haven't got that sort of foundation, I think you really struggle a bit.
I guess on skill acquisition, we had a brief conversation about it, but I asked you to hold it. Okay. You mentioned that you're doing jiu-jitsu now.
Oh, yes.
So I'm a real again, I like all different sports, and I've
Okay.
been following UFC, mixed martial arts, a lot more.
Well, UFC was, mixed martial arts was what I liked to start with, and then it's developed into. I still like mixed martial arts, but I started to do jiu-jitsu. I didn't want to get punched in the face.
Yeah, I'll be honest. That's part of the reason why I want to go
Okay.
down there because
Okay.
of not getting hit, the sparring and stuff. So I'd be interested in terms of being able to roll with people and that type of stuff.
Okay.
How have you found the development of skills for that within you? Like for you going into a relatively new sport and whatnot. And
I like to think I had a good foundation in the fact that I did judo as a kid. So although very different, it was a grappling art to a certain extent. So I did have a brief background. My interest in MMA and the grappling side of MMA, I think because of my interest in it, I'd already had a mental foundation of how these things work and how these operate. And even the biomechanics, I did my master's degree in biomechanics, so even the biomechanical aspects of it, I know very different, but I still had an understanding. So it was difficult. The biggest thing for me with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was just turning up. Just going to your first class and going, this is completely unknown to me. I've never done this before in my life. These guys are trying to choke me and strangle me. What's it going to be like? And luckily I had a friend who actually fought in the UFC. And this was when I was living in Cambridge. I did my first class. And quickly fell in love with it. And it's tough to start with because you need the fundamental aspects of it, of how to move your hips. And then obviously once you've got those fundamentals, then you can start to develop, various attacking options, this, that and the other. And luckily it snowballed from there, and you have to start somewhere. But it's a test. I found it a real test mentally, and I still do. Every jiu-jitsu, I have this conversation with my wife all the time. Every jiu-jitsu session I go to, it's a struggle. Because it's a struggle getting there because of that mental challenge of 1v1. And it's not always 1v1 fighting. You're practicing your drilling, you're rolling casually or whatever. But it's still just you. There's no hiding place. So I still have this element of, am I going to be good enough at this? But then when I get there, I absolutely love it. And the feeling afterwards is the best feeling in the world. My wife used to, before I was married to her, we lived in separate towns actually, we weren't living together. And when she'd phone me in the evening sometimes and she'd go, you've just done jiu-jitsu, haven't you? And I'm like, yeah, how do you know that? And she just knew from the tone of my voice, just because of what it brought to me. And obviously I've got a love of it now, and I have. It's it's an infectious thing. But it's very, very different from being in a football environment. Different people as well. I think it's almost this vehicle for, I think Joe Rogan said, it's martial arts are a vehicle to make himself a better individual or something along those lines. And I believe it is. It makes you more humble. Because especially, when someone's choking you and you've got to tap, all right, you've got to tap, you beat me.
Yeah, so I guess at the start as well, when if you're rolling or drilling with people that are a lot better than you, they're going to constantly choke you out or constantly catch you and stuff, and you just got to kind of go, no, I'm going to grind and work through this.
And there's this popular saying in jiu-jitsu, you either win or learn, and I think you're always going to get choked, you're always going to get strangled, you're always going to get armbarred or knee barred or toe barred or whatever. And someone said to me before, a black belt is just a white belt that's been doing it a lot longer. So my progression of where I am now, I'm in the middle now. So I've just got my purple belt, which I'm really pleased with, but I know I've got a huge amount to do to get before I progress to my black belt. So even though I've been, I'm sort of halfway through the belts, I still have that challenge of overcoming this mental thing. And it is an inherent thing individually. And being honest, I don't really want to compete in it. And I have this thing with my instructor who wants me to compete. I'm very reluctant to compete because I spent a large period of my life competing in football and preparing for it, and it took over my life. So if I'm going to compete in jiu-jitsu, I know it will take over. I know I won't be able to sleep. I know I'll be thinking about it for weeks beforehand. I'm not sure I want to do that. So I love doing it as a hobby and having that physical, and it is. I think some of it is the physical contact, because when I was playing football, I like the physical contact. I like the tackling. I like the real heading aspect, and really being to compete with someone at close quarters. And jiu-jitsu allows you to do that. Slightly different, because like I say, someone's trying to render you unconscious. But I love it. Yeah.
And how have you found the transition from, obviously, football, massively a team sport, can rely on other people, they can, as you put earlier, they can drag you up or drag you down.
Yeah.
How have you found it being just you? Because ultimately, although you're learning skills and stuff, if you get caught in an arm bar, that's because you have put your arm somewhere you shouldn't have done, and they've
blame anybody else.
Yeah.
Like I say, I think it makes you more humble, because you're going to get beaten. You know, I rolled with a friend of mine on Monday night who, you know, we're quite even. He's got his purple belt too, and we're the same sort of standard. He's younger than me and stronger than me and more explosive than me. We've got very different games. But usually we're quite even, or I get the better of him for a large period, and then he gets the better of me on Monday. I was hopeless. And he got the better of me quite regularly on Monday. And I think it's what a few years ago, I've been spewing over that. I'll be like, that can't happen. He's just beat me so many times. But now I'm like, well, I've got to accept it. It's just one of them things. It's my fault. I learn from it. I won't get caught in that footlock again, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
So, and you go through peaks and troughs anyway. So next time we roll, I may destroy him, you know. But I think it just adds lots of other facets. I mean, from an individual sports point of view, it certainly builds confidence, self-defense aspect, and all that sort of thing. So, it's you can't rely on anyone else. There's no hiding place, like I say. It's just you and that other individual. And the majority of individuals that you do roll with, whether it's in a real competitive sparring session or just a practice session, are usually pretty good people. And if you've done something obvious and you're obviously wrong and they're higher belt than you, they'll help you.
So don't do that, because otherwise this will happen.
That, I'm going to do this. Yeah. And there's always usually a reaction to, well, you do that, I'm going to do this. So, and the higher belts, obviously the brown, loads of blue belts help you. You know, loads of purple belts will help you. Brown belts and black belts. They want you to learn. You know, it's quite a different environment. You know, it's not a very. Football can be very all about me. This is about me. Whereas jiu-jitsu is very, very different. Although it's about the individual, it's almost the collective, focusing on an individual to help them.
Do you think there's any way to get that crossover? Because I imagine if you had a team that had that kind of environment where they're helping each other out with tips and stuff, you'd be in quite a good place as a group. Yeah,
definitely. If there's a tool that we could use to do that, just I think it would be a good thing. Yeah. I've actually mentioned doing jiu-jitsu to the group just to see what their response is. Just to take them in the dojo here and say, let's do some jiu-jitsu.
Bad feedback?
Put it this way, I gave them the option a little while ago of jiu-jitsu or trampolining. They want to do trampolining. Or the small group I asked said trampolining. Maybe it's because they're just it's something they've done before. They've never ever done jiu-jitsu before. I don't know. I'll revisit it. Because, like I said earlier, other sports, they can give you different tools to deal with situations that you have to deal with in later life. So
I think a lot of the time people like familiarity, don't they? And having that, like this for me, why I started this was a New Year's resolution with me and my wife. Yeah. We wanted to try something new. Yeah. So I was enjoying listening to him, so decided to do this. Yeah. She did a stand-up comedy course and went on stage.
Oh, okay.
Both of us, I remember the first time before I did a recording, I was nervous because I was like, what, would you say something stupid, something new? But actually, as a person, it's helped me because I feel a little bit more confident because actually you can try something new. I'm going to make mistakes, I'm doing it, but that's fine. Yeah. I'd imagine that would be the same when you first started jiu-jitsu, or if those lads are going there, they don't want to do it because I'm familiar, but they probably, one or two of them go, actually, I love that. Yeah. I'm going to do that again.
Well, there are a couple of lads that I've worked with in the past that actually have done it and really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And I think jiu-jitsu is one of those things that if you do it, it's infectious and you stick with it. Although there is a large dropout rate at a certain belt because it is quite a long process to be I think black belt, the average is black belt is 10 to 12 years or something. So it is a long period of time. Whereas the other martial arts are graded slightly differently. So I'm at the belt where they say it's very well. You're getting towards that. Well, they're not a million miles away now. When you start as a white belt, you almost go, oh, I don't do it. I don't know anything. This is ridiculous. I don't know how to do this. I don't really know how to do that. In your blue belt, you're starting to nail down basic fundamental aspects of it. And then purple belt is where they say that you start to find your own game. Okay, this is good for my body shape and type, what I'm good at, and you start to narrow your own game. And brown belts and black belts are just ridiculously good.
Yeah.
So, but even within, the purple belt system they're all different. All all got different games, different styles, different things we like, things we don't like. Yeah, I'd like to. The danger I have with regards to the football lads, and I've mentioned to them about doing jiu-jitsu in the past to them, only very flippantly, loosely, is I don't want to do it just because it's an interest of mine.
Yeah.
Almost it has to add value, and I think it will add value to some, but won't add value to others. So, do I still do it?
Well, I heard conversations a few years ago that said the England rugby team were doing judo to help with placement of body and being able to manipulate,
and all that sort of stuff,
which I guess it's a real clear correlation for those guys there to do that. Yeah. I guess from the footballer side, they're probably looking and going, well, where's the correlation in this?
Exactly.
Which again,
toughen them up a bit.
Yeah. So that it might. But I think what I'm realising as I get a little bit older, probably till when I was younger, is actually sometimes just putting yourself completely in a different comfort zone, even if it's not that related, is a massive positive to you. Yeah,
just being out of your comfort zone. Yeah, no meaningful. I did my A licence, and Jeff Pike put on the board, and he pointed when I walked in one morning, and he pointed at it. He goes, "There you go." And I looked at it and it said, "No meaningful learning comes about unless you take yourself out of your comfort zone." And he put that on the wall just for me. In front of 24 others. I was thinking, okay, thanks. But I think I came across, and this is another thing that was massively evident when I did my A licence, and I viewed, you get your videos. My perception of myself is so different than others' perceptions of me and what they see. I was watching the session that I did, and I felt one way, that feeling of conducting a session, and I felt this and I felt that. And then I watched it back afterwards, and I was like, that's not what I felt. I cannot believe that's a completely different person doing that than the one that was there. Just like things like, I remember being really nervous, rushing my speech and rushing things and doing things really fast. I watched it on the video, and I'm, so slow and laboured. I thought, I should have had a dog with me. It's so casual, and there wasn't enough urgency in it. So. And that was a massive, massive highlight for me. Not everybody sees the same person as what you see.
Yeah.
But yeah, so lots of people will probably think, oh, he does jiu-jitsu, so it's going to be this really aggressive, confident individual. But it's really not me. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah. No, again, I've just done my A licence, and the interesting one for me was the psychological corner, getting your can't remember the name of it now, but getting your profile back.
Okay. Right,
because for me, and the way that I feel, obviously I go around and talk to people and around the uni around here, quite friendly and chatty. But what it highlighted in the plan, and subsequently when I thought about it, is correct. It's people that I know and trust. So I'll say hello to you quite a lot because we've got a fairly decent rapport and I get on really well with you. What I'd find really nerve-wracking is if I didn't know you, first time I met you, I'd be there going, what am I going to say to him to think, rather than just going up and say hello, realise you're another human being, and actually we both like football, so as a start point, I know we're all right. But for me, that was real interesting, and again, it's the perception of myself and perception of what others see, and I saw myself change over that course. In terms of initially, I kind of sat back and was just listening to what everyone was saying, and was trying to take in the room a little bit. Towards the end, I felt like I was more confident having dialogue with different people and disagreements on thoughts or strategies and stuff like that. So for me, I felt that was a real good development process and kind of just understanding myself a little bit more, which...
I think we all need to be very self-aware, and I'm very similar to you, and I still am. You know, my A licence, I'm someone who sits back and listens and takes it all on board. I'm not necessarily someone that contributes too much, because it's almost, you know, when you speak, you're just saying, "Well, this is what I know." But yeah, I'm one of those that sit and listen and study and think. Doesn't mean to, you know, it may appear that I'm not taking part in the session, but actually I am, but just not
your way
as such. It's just doing it my way. And I probably started to contribute a little bit more because I'm aware of it, and I'm starting to learn a bit more and become more knowledgeable and think, actually, I can add value here. Not necessarily the same as what other people will contribute. So, you know, we all have our own experiences and our own socio-historic processes, and we're all different. And, you know, you'll say something in the room and 5 people might identify with it, 5 people might say what a load of rubbish that was, and then 5 people go, yeah, actually I can really use that. We're not all the same, are we?
No, not at all.
But yeah, that perception of individuals, we've all got it, you know. I've got a perception of people who walk around this building every day. Not necessarily the right one, or what they really are, but that's what I see.
And what you take in and your experiences allow you to form those opinions and whatnot.
Exactly. So, yeah.
I guess
we'll have a roll sometime.
Yeah, sounds good. Well, I've never done it, but it's one of those things that I'd love to do. I would really love to do. Is obviously at the moment I work evenings a lot of the time, which isn't a great ideal. But I think if there's ever a point where I didn't, I think I'd probably go and spend a night a week and actually.
I'll the dojo here, mate. No one mind.
Yeah, give it a go.
I sometimes join in with the judo guys, so they bully me, but there we go.
Well, I'm hoping at some point to be able to speak to obviously different people around this place. It might be that they go, okay, you've mentioned this, so that'll go and do it. But no, it'd be good. Yeah, again, good to take me out of my comfort zone and try something new. And I guess this is kind of the last question. I've been asking everyone this.
Right, okay.
So it'd be interesting to see what your answer is. Which is, who's the best player or coach or whoever you've played with or against, and why?
Blimey. Best player I've played with. Against. I'd probably have to say best player I played with is probably Craig Bellamy. He just had that natural ability, ruthlessness, desire, belief, and I mean I remember obviously a lot of that is obviously I played with him at a young age, and now he's played at some of the biggest clubs in the country. And I mean, when he was at Man City and he had a phenomenal year at Man City, and how he didn't win Player of the Year is beyond me. You know, the PFA Player of the Year is beyond me. I think his probably face didn't fit the profile, but I just thought it was phenomenal. So yeah, probably Craig. Yeah, a very good player. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to play with some other very good players in the past, but Craig's probably the best of all. Best player I played against. I mean, again, this is a very fleeting name drop. Eric Cantona and Paul Scholes in that testimonial game. And Paul Scholes for me was, you know, one of the most gifted players these islands have ever produced. Technically, couldn't tackle, but a lot of the time he didn't need to because he was so good with the ball and never always had it instead of trying to get it back. So, but yeah, just this awareness of what was around him, this technical ability, and yeah, I think Paul Scholes, you know, I don't really have to say too much about him. There are some lower league players that I've been absolutely rinsed by wingers, you know, so that you've never heard of. But I remember playing against Darren Bent once, and he was the quickest thing I've ever seen. And you said coaches?
Yeah, if there's any coaches that you've had particularly positive experiences with.
Yeah, I mean, I had a coach at Norwich City who was the reserve team manager at the time, a guy called Steve Foley, who's actually is he still working at Ipswich? think he's still working at Ipswich now, but he was just one. I mean, I was young pro when I worked with him. And he was just really, really good with us all. His coaching sessions were brilliant. They were engaging. They were the way we wanted to play. But he was also very good on an individual level. He really had, you could tell just he was passionate about what he did, and he just wanted the best for you as an individual. So as a coach, Steve was definitely up there. Managers, Ian Holloway was infectious. Bruce Rioch was, if you could probably mould Ian Holloway with Bruce Rioch, probably a really, really
Fergie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so Ollie was a little bit too much at times, but you couldn't help but be absorbed by his infectious nature and his love for the game, and want to do well for him. Bruce was obviously I'll always talk about Bruce because he gave me my debut in league football, so the best manager ever.
No, listen, Che,
right.
I appreciate you taking quite a lot of time out of your day for this.
Mate.
And
sorry, there's a lot of waffle there.
No, that's great. I really appreciate it, and obviously I'll see you around.
No problem.
Cheers.
Pleasure.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Initiative podcast with me, Michael Wright. Please remember to follow us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram at the Sports Initiative Podcast, and share this podcast with friends and family. I'll see you next week.